I never imagined that the sound of a quiet home could hurt more than a wound. But that was before everything changed. Before life tore our family apart and left me standing in the middle of memories that refused to fade. The morning it all began, the city was humming with its usual noise, cars honking, street vendors calling out prices, neighbors arguing about nothing that mattered. Yet inside our apartment, it felt like time had pressed pause. Something in the air felt wrong. Not dangerous, just heavy. The kind of heaviness that warns you that life is about to shift in a way you can never prepare for. I remember waking up on the couch, the sun brushing through the blinds, casting lines across the floor like a warning sign. My younger brother Jordan was in the kitchen stirring oatmeal with a focus that didn't match his age. He was 13, but that morning he looked older, like the weight of something unseen had settled on him in his sleep. "Mom left early again," he said quietly, sliding a bowl toward me. His voice carried a note I recognized too well, disappointment masked as acceptance. Our mother, Liana, had 2 jobs. Not because she wanted to, but because life demanded it. Bills didn't care about exhaustion, and the world didn't pause for anyone. She always said, "One day, this home will be a place we celebrate, not just survive." I didn't know then how close or how far we were from that promise. As I lifted the spoon, a memory flashed, bright, quick, and sharp. Dad, standing by the refrigerator 3 years earlier, smiling as he handed me a plate of pancakes shaped like crooked hearts. He had laughed as if the world wasn't already falling apart around him. I pushed the memory aside. No use bleeding over yesterday, I reminded myself. But the universe had already decided this was the day everything resurfaced. At 10 a.m., as I walked through the crowded streets toward work, someone called my name. A voice from a past I tried burying. I froze before turning. It was Aunt Clara, Mom's older sister. Her eyes were red, her hands gripping her purse like she was afraid it would disappear. She looked at me the way people look at someone who deserves bad news, gently. "Eli," she said, "we need to talk. There are sentences that change the direction of a person's life." That was the first one for me. She didn't speak immediately. Instead, she guided me toward a small cafe, the kind that sold apple pie and warm cornbread. The moment we sat, she started tapping the table with her nails short, sharp taps that told me she was holding onto courage by a strand. "It's about your father," she finally said. My breath paused. My chest tightened. My father Raymond had left us 3 years earlier. Not because he didn't love us, but because he was drowning in a storm none of us understood then. He didn't vanish. He faded. No calls. No letters. Just absence. What about him? I asked, even though part of me didn't want the answer. She swallowed hard. "He's back in the city." The words hit like they were meant to bruise. Back, after all this time. I wanted to feel anger. I wanted to stand up and walk out. But another emotion pushed through fear. Not of him, but of what his return meant. Aunt Clara continued, "He's asking to see you in Jordan. He said it's important, urgent." I stared at the table, searching for reason in the wood grain. So many questions crowded my mind, none of them forming clearly. "Why now?" I whispered, her eyes soft with a sorrow that tightened my throat. She leaned closer, lowering her voice as if the truth could shatter if spoken too loudly. "Eli, your father is sick." The cafe noise dulled. The world shifted. My heartbeat stumbled. "Very sick," she added. "And he doesn't have much time." A slow, cold wave washed over me. Memories I had buried. Dad carrying Jordan on his shoulders. Dad laughing as he tried to teach me how to fix a loose door hinge. Dad hugging Mom from behind as she cooked flooded back without mercy. I tried to speak, but my voice cracked. Aunt Clara reached across the table and held my hand. "He wants to explain what happened. He wants to see home again. Before heaven calls him." Her words echoed in my chest like a heartbeat breaking. And in that moment, I felt it, the beginning of the end. The beginning of truth. The beginning of a home we would have to rebuild. Or lose completely. The walk back home felt longer than usual, like the city had stretched itself just to test me. Every step seemed heavier, as if my legs were trying to drag me backward to a moment before Aunt Clara's words existed. Before the truth settled in my chest like a stone I couldn't swallow. When I reached our apartment building, Jordan was sitting on the front steps, tapping his sneakers against the concrete. He always did that when he was worried. I could tell even from a distance that he sensed something was off. Younger brothers somehow have a radar for emotional storms. "You're back early," he said, squinting at me. His tone wasn't casual. It was cautious, the way people speak when they're bracing for impact. I sat beside him, feeling the familiar grind of the city rumbling under us. Kids played soccer across the street. Someone blasted a song from a window. A delivery truck rattled over a pothole. Life went on, unaware that ours had just cracked open. "I ran to Aunt Clara," I said. Jordan's tapping stopped. "Did something happen to Mom?" "No." I swallowed. "It's about Dad." His face stiffened. He looked away, jaw clenched, eyes blinking slower than normal. "We're not doing this again," he muttered. I understood his reaction. For him, Dad leaving wasn't just abandonment. It was betrayal. He stopped asking about him a long time ago. Stopped waiting for birthdays, holidays, anything. He locked that door inside himself and threw away the key. But today, I had to break it open. "He's back," I said softly. Jordan snapped his gaze toward me. "Back where? Here? In this city?" I nodded. He stared at me like I had spoken something unforgivable. "Why would you even tell me that?" "Because you deserve to know." "Know what?" His voice rose slightly. "That he disappeared when we needed him most? That he left Mom barely surviving? That he left us." "He's sick," I said, cutting through his anger gently. The words landed hard. His mouth parted, but nothing came out. "I saw the wall he'd built tremble." "What kind of sick?" He whispered. "The kind that doesn't get better." He closed his eyes, his shoulders slumping, the fight draining out of him. Then he surprised me. Instead of sinking into anger, he leaned forward and placed his elbows on his knees, breathing deeply as if trying to keep himself together. "What does he want?" Jordan asked. "He wants to see us." Jordan shook his head. "No, I don't want to see him. Not now. Not after—" The front door opened. Mom stepped out, her face tired but warm as always. She looked between us, sensing the tension instantly. "What's going on?" she asked. I hesitated. I didn't want to add to her stress, not after everything she already carried. But truth has a way of demanding its place. "It's Dad," I said. She froze. Not the kind of freeze that comes from fear, this was recognition. As if some part of her had been waiting for this moment, even though she'd never admit it. "Aunt Clara found me," I added. "He wants to see us." Mom stood silent for a long moment. Then she sat beside us, the three of us lined up like shadows clinging to each other. Her eyes softened with something old love. Grief? Regret? I couldn't tell. "When did she tell you?" she asked quietly. "This morning." "And she told you why he came back?" I nodded. "He's sick." Mom stared ahead, the sunlight catching the side of her face. She didn't cry. She didn't break. She simply inhaled and exhaled, like she had been preparing for this moment in small breaths for years. "He was diagnosed months ago," she said finally. "He called me once." I didn't answer. My heart twisted. "Why didn't you?" "I wasn't ready." Her voice trembled. I didn't know how to face him. How to forgive him. How stop being angry long enough to hear what he had to say. Jordan leaned back, stunned. "Mom, he tried calling you?" "Yes." She rubbed her palms together. "And when I didn't answer, he stopped trying. I don't blame him." We were hurting. All of us. Silence settled between us, heavy but honest. "Do you want to see him?" I asked her. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked at us with eyes filled with something deep and painful. He was once our home before everything fell apart. Before life pulled him into a darkness none of us understood. She paused. "And if heaven truly is calling him, then we need to decide what kind of people we are before that time comes." I felt Jordan shift beside me. Not acceptance, not yet, but something softer than anger. Mom stood and brushed dust off her clothes. "If we go see him," she said, "we go together. Or not at all." Her words lingered in the air like a promise or a warning. Then she added something that chilled me. "There are things you boys don't know about what happened back then. Things I never thought I'd have to explain." A cold ripple traveled through me. Foreshadow. A secret. A truth waiting in the dark. And it wasn't from Dad, it was from her. Mom's words did something to the air around us. It felt tighter, like the walls of our lives were inching closer, forcing us to face something we never questioned before. Jordan sat up straighter, his forehead creased. I could feel his confusion mixing with the resentment he'd tried so hard to bury. "What do you mean? Things we don't know?" I asked. Mom didn't answer right away. Instead, she motioned for us to follow her inside. The hallway smelled like old paint and laundry detergent, and every step echoed louder than usual. It felt like we were walking into a room full of ghosts, our ghosts. Once inside, she sat at the dining table, the same table Dad had built when we first moved here. He spent 2 days sanding it, shaping it, making it strong. He always said a family needed a table that could hold more than plates. It needed to hold stories, laughter, arguments, everything in between. I never imagined the same table would one day serve as a stage for the truths we had avoided. Mom rested her hands on the wood. Her fingers trembled slightly, but her voice held steady. "There was more to your father's disappearance," she began. "More than you boys ever saw." Jordan folded his arms. "Like what?" "He left. That's what happened." "No," she said quietly. "He didn't leave. He was pushed out." That froze both of us. "What?" I whispered. "By who?" Mom looked down, her voice softening into something painful. "By people who wanted to protect him and protect us." It made no sense. Jordan shook his head. "Mom, no one pushes a grown man out of his family." She looked up, her eyes glistening but firm. "When your father got into trouble, real trouble, he tried to keep us out of it. But trouble has a way of touching everything." A faint memory flashed Dad arguing on the phone late at night. His voice tense, repeating the phrase, "I told you I'm done." At the time, I thought it was work stress. But now, what kind of trouble? I asked. Mom hesitated, then said a name we hadn't heard in years. Victor. My stomach dropped. Victor was Dad's childhood friend, a man who carried charm like a mask and danger like a shadow. He was always around back then, always smiling, always offering help that felt too generous. As a kid, I remember how his presence made Dad restless, like he owed him something invisible. Mom continued. Your father loaned him money years ago. A large amount. Victor promised he'd return it, but instead he dragged your father into his problems. Illegal problems. Jordan blinked rapidly. Dad was involved in illegal stuff? No, he tried to avoid it. But Victor used his name, his reputation, his connections. And when things went wrong, your father was threatened. What kind of threats? I asked, feeling my pulse quicken. Enough to make him believe that staying with us would put us in danger? Her voice tightened. So he left. He walked away because he thought disappearing would keep you boys safe. Jordan leaned back, stunned. His anger seemed to lose its footing. So, he didn't leave because he didn't love us? He asked quietly. Mom shook her head. He left because he loved you too much. The room felt heavier with every word she said. I didn't know whether to feel relief or heartbreak. Maybe both. Why didn't you tell us then? I asked because you were too young. And I was ashamed. I was angry at him for trusting the wrong people. Angry at Victor. Angry at myself for not seeing it sooner. She sighed. But mostly, I didn't want to crush the image you had of your father. I thought he'd come back once things settled. But they didn't, Jordan whispered. No, she replied. They only got worse. And now he's coming home. Not because things got better, but because time is running out. A silence fell over us, thick, emotional, raw. Jordan stared at the floor. So what do we do? Just show up? Act like everything's fine? Mom's expression softened. No, but we show up as who we are, his family. Not perfect. Not healed. But willing to talk. I felt a knot in my throat. When do we see him? Mom hesitated. Tonight. Jordan's head jerked up. Tonight? That fast? He doesn't have much time, she reminded us. I felt a chill race down my spine. Tonight, we were going to see the man who built this family, and the man whose silence nearly destroyed it. As the weight of it settled, Mom reached out and grabbed both our hands. "I know you're scared," she said, "but whatever happens tonight, remember this. Our home existed before the pain, before the mistakes, and we need to decide what pieces of it we want to rebuild before heaven calls him." Foreshadow. Her words hinted at something final, something irreversible, something we weren't ready for. But time didn't wait for readiness. Tonight, everything would begin. Or end. The hours leading up to the visit felt stretched and strange, like time was trying to warn us that what waited on the other side of evening would change everything. Mom ironed a shirt for Jordan even though he didn't ask. Jordan kept pacing the living room, wearing down the floor with every nervous step. And I kept staring at the clock, watching the seconds slip away. When the sun started dipping behind the tall buildings outside our window, Mom finally said, "It's time." Those words landed in the room like a weight. We took the bus to the address Aunt Clara had given me. It wasn't far, but it felt like traveling into another version of our past. The city lights flickered on one by one as if the streets themselves were preparing to witness whatever truth waited for us. The building was an old apartment complex near the river. The kind of place where paint peeled and tenants kept their doors double-locked. Not dangerous, just tired, worn down by years of stories nobody bothered to tell anymore. Mom hesitated before knocking on the door. I could see it in her face, years of love, pain, hope, doubt, all twisting together into one fragile breath. Then the door opened, and there he was, Dad. He looked nothing like the man in my memories. His shoulders were thinner, his cheeks hollowed, his skin pale in places where it used to glow with warmth. But his eyes were still the same soft, warm, the kind that held entire stories even when he didn't speak. "Liana," he whispered, staring at Mom like seeing her was a miracle he never thought he'd witness again. Mom swallowed. "Ray." They stood there for a heartbeat that felt painfully long. Then Dad's gaze drifted to Jordan and me. His eyes trembled with something that punched through my chest, regret so deep it almost looked like grief. "You boys," his voice cracked. "You grew up." Jordan stiffened beside me. "Yeah," he said flatly. "We did." Dad stepped aside. "Come in." The apartment was small but clean. On the table sat a plate with untouched fried chicken and cornbread, like he had tried to cook something familiar but lost the appetite halfway through. A medical bag hung near the couch. A folded blanket. A small oxygen tank in the corner. Reality hit hard. He wasn't just sick. He was close to the end. We sat down, awkwardly spaced like strangers trying not to trespass into each other's silence. Dad looked at us for a long moment, as if choosing where to begin. "I didn't want to leave," he said finally. "I need you to know that." Jordan let out a short, bitter laugh. "But you did." Dad's shoulders tensed. "I know. And I've lived with that guilt every day." Mom placed a hand on Jordan's arm. "Let him speak." Dad exhaled, shaky and thin. "I was scared. Victor dragged me into something I couldn't escape. He owed people money, dangerous people. And he used my name, my records, everything. I didn't realize how deep he'd gone until it was too late." Jordan scoffed. "So you ran?" "No," Dad said, shaking his head weakly. "I stayed long enough to get us all into danger. They came to me. They threatened you boys. They threatened Liana. And the only way to pull them away was to disappear. Make it look like I was no use to them anymore." Mom closed her eyes, tears threatening. "You should have told me." "I didn't want you caught in the storm," he whispered. "I thought staying away meant everyone would be safe." "That's not safety," Jordan said quietly. "That's abandonment." Dad's face crumbled. "You're right." The honesty in his voice surprised all of us. "And I can't change that," he continued. "But I can tell you the truth before I don't get another chance." His breathing grew heavier and he leaned back, clutching the armrest. I moved toward him instinctively. "Are you okay?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "Just tired." Mom reached for the medical bag, checking the small bottles inside. She recognized something before we did. Reality was closer than we thought. Dad looked at us again. I wanted to see home again. Not the place, but the people who made it feel like one. The words landed deep, stirring something I didn't know I still had for him. Then he looked at Jordan, holding his gaze with fragile intensity. I'm sorry I missed your birthdays. Your school events. Your moments. I'm sorry I wasn't there when you needed a father. I'm sorry for every night you wondered why I didn't come back. Jordan blinked rapidly, eyes shining with emotions he fought to hide. You don't get to say sorry and fix everything, Jordan said. Dad nodded. No, but I need you to hear it anyway. A silence followed, but it wasn't empty. It was full, heavy with everything we hadn't said for years. After a moment, Dad turned toward Mom. There's more. Something I need to tell you. Something I should have said before I left. Mom froze. Ray, what is it? He opened his mouth. Then suddenly, a loud knock echoed through the door. Hard, sharp, unfriendly. Dad's eyes widened. And, just like that, the past we thought was gone walked straight into the room. The knock wasn't normal. It wasn't the kind neighbors used. It hit the door like a warning, deep, forceful, deliberate. The kind of knock that makes your chest tighten whether you want it to or not. Dad's reaction told us everything. His eyes widened. His breath caught. His hand trembled against the chair. Whatever he was about to tell us, whoever was on the other side of the door, it was connected. Ray, Mom whispered, voice thin. Who is that? Dad didn't answer. Instead, he tried to stand, but his legs shook beneath him. I rushed to his side, helping him stay steady, but he shook his head urgently. Don't open the door, he whispered. Another knock, harder this time. Jordan flinched, looking toward the door with fear and anger mixing in his expression. Dad, I said, what's going on? Dad swallowed hard. It's them. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. After all these years? They still? Yes, Dad's voice cracked. I tried to settle things before coming back. I did everything I could. But Victor, he wasn't the only one. And these people don't forget debts, even when the person who owed them is long gone. Jordan stepped closer. So they're here because of Victor? Dad shook his head slowly. Because of me. Because I signed one thing I shouldn't have. A mistake I've been paying for ever since. The knock turned into a voice deep and cold. Raymond, we know you're inside. Open the door. Mom, single quotes, S breath hitched. Jordan stiffened. I felt a cold wave crawl up my spine. Dad motioned us to stay behind him. Nobody says a word, he whispered. But Mom stepped forward, protective instinct overriding every fear. They aren't coming near my sons. Dad grabbed her arm gently but firmly. Liana, please. Don't open it. A moment of tense silence passed. Then another voice joined in, familiar in the worst way. Ray, it's me. Just open up. Mom's eyes went wide. Jordan froze. I felt my stomach twist. That voice. We knew it. Not fondly. Not warmly. But we knew it. Victor. The man Dad once trusted more than his own instincts. The man whose decisions destroyed our home. Mom whispered, why is he with them? Dad closed his eyes. Because he's the reason they're here. The door rattled as someone shook the handle. Raymond, we don't have all day. Dad turned to us, breathing shallow, voice trembling. Listen to me. If something happens, go out the back window. Don't try to talk to them. Don't try to negotiate. They only understand one thing, control. And you don't give them any. Jordan's voice cracked. Dad, are they dangerous? Dad didn't answer. His silence was louder than any words. Another heavy blow struck the door. The frame shook. Raymond! Victor shouted. Just let us in. They just want to talk. Dad's eyes narrowed. He's lying. Mom's voice turned sharp. He always lies. I stepped toward the door, adrenaline pushing my fear aside. We can't just stand here. Dad grabbed my wrist. You're not opening that door. The door shook again. Mom whispered, they won't go away. Dad looked at her with a mixture of sorrow and urgency. I never wanted any of this near them. I thought if I stayed away, the past would die before it reached you. Jordan's eyes softened. Dad, were you going to tell us all this? Dad nodded weakly. Tonight. Everything before. He cut off as another knock echoed, this one sharper, faster. Not forceful, urgent. Raymond. It's Clara. Open up before they come back. Aunt Clara. Mom rushed to the door, unlatching it in a single motion. Clara stumbled in, out of breath, hair messy, eyes wide with panic. She shut the door behind her and locked it quickly. They're circling the building, she said, voice shaking. They know Ray is sick. They think they can pressure him now. They want signatures. They want closure on debts that were never his. Dad sank onto the chair, exhausted. Clara, I told you not to come. And let them barge in here while your boys are in the house? She fired back. Not a chance. Jordan stepped forward. What do they want from him now? He's dying. Clara looked at him sad, serious. Desperation makes people cruel. And they want something from him before he's gone. Mom clenched her jaw. What exactly do they want? Clara hesitated, then turned to Dad. Ray, you have to tell them. You have to tell your family. Dad closed his eyes, pain tightening his features. His voice came out strained. It's the papers. I frowned. What papers? He opened his eyes and looked at us, broken, ashamed, resigned. The ones that put our home in their hands. Mom's lips parted in horror. Rayno. Jordan whispered. What do you mean? Our home? Dad's voice cracked, barely a whisper now. The house. The ownership. The rights. A shaky breath. I signed it over to them. Years ago. Silence. The kind of silence that breaks something inside a family. Dad bowed his head. They own everything. And they're here to collect before heaven calls me. The room felt smaller after Dad's confession. Not just small, compressed, like the walls themselves were trying to fold in on us. Mom stared at him with a kind of disbelief that didn't come from shock alone. It came from heartbreak. Ray, she whispered, voice trembling. You put our home, our future, in their hands? Dad couldn't lift his head. I was drowning, Liana. I thought I could fix it fast. I thought if I bought time, I could win us back the life we were losing. Jordan clenched his fists so tightly his knuckles turned white. You didn't win us time. You gave them everything. Clara stepped between us gently. Let's not turn on each other. Not now. Those men are still outside. We need a plan. But Jordan wasn't backing down. A plan? A plan for what? To fix something Dad broke 10 years ago? Dad flinched. I could see the guilt eating him in real time. Jordan, Mom said quietly, this isn't helping. No, he snapped. What's not helping is acting like this is just a sad story. He gave away our home like it was nothing. Dad finally looked up, eyes red, face tired, voice thin and raw. I gave away our home, he said softly, to protect you. Jordan froze mid-step. The anger in his chest flickered with confusion. Dad continued, each word slower than the last. They threatened to hurt you boys. They threatened to take you. Signing those papers was the only way they agreed to leave you alone. Silence washed over the room. Not disbelief. Not forgiveness. Just silence. Mom pressed a hand to her forehead. Ray, why didn't you tell me? We could have faced it together. I was ashamed, he whispered. And terrified. They said if I told you, they'd come after you first. The truth hit like cold water. Painful. Sharp. Real. Suddenly, the banging from earlier felt different, not just threatening. Predictive. Because they weren't here for money or signatures. They were here to reclaim something Dad had promised years ago. Clara walked to the window and peeked through the blinds. There are 2 of them by the cars. Victor is across the street pacing. They're getting impatient. Mom inhaled slowly, steadying herself. We need to leave. Through the back window, like Ray said. Jordan shook his head. Leave and go where? If they own the house, if they own everything. Where do we go? Mom's eyes softened. We go somewhere safe. Somewhere temporary. Somewhere they can't corner us. Dad winced, suddenly clutching his chest. His breathing turned shallow, uneven. His skin paled. "Dad?" I rushed forward. "Are you okay?" He nodded weakly, but his eyes told the truth. He wasn't. Mom knelt beside him. "Ray, breathe slowly. Tell me what's happening." He leaned back, gripping the edge of the table. "I'm fine," he lied. I need a minute." Clara knelt too, touching his shoulder. "This isn't the time to push yourself. You're not strong enough for this." Dad shook his head. "I have to be. I need to explain everything before." He stopped mid-sentence. Mom's voice softened. "Before what?" Dad stared at us with an expression that made my stomach twist. "Before time runs out." Jordan shifted closer, voice suddenly small. "Dad, how bad is it?" "Really?" Dad hesitated. Then he spoke the words we feared. "The doctors gave me 3 months." Mom closed her eyes, pain spreading across her face like a slow burn. Clara looked away, wiping tears. Jordan stumbled back as if the floor shifted under him. 3 months? Dad nodded weakly. "How long ago was that?" Jordan asked. Dad hesitated. A long pause. Then, 2 months. Mom covered her mouth. A soft cry escaped before she could stop it. And suddenly the urgency made sense. The knocking. The rush to see us. The desperation in his voice. The way he watched us like he was memorizing every detail. He didn't have 3 months left. He barely had one. Outside, a voice yelled, "Raymond." "Last warning." Clara turned sharply. "We don't have much time." Mom wiped her tears and stood. "We're leaving now." "I lie. Help your father." "Jordan, grab his medical bag." Jordan hesitated but obeyed. Dad weakly grabbed my arm. "Listen to me." His voice was fading, trembling. "If anything happens to me, don't let them take the house from your mother. There's a way to stop them." Mom froze. "Ray, what way?" Dad took a shaky breath. "The papers. There's a second set. One that can undo everything." My heartbeat stumbled. "Where is it?" He looked up at me with fading eyes. "In the house." A chill ran through all of us. "The papers are hidden in our old home," Dad whispered. "Find them before they do." Before I could ask another question, a loud crash hit the door. They were breaking in. Everything exploded into motion. Mom grabbed my arm. "Move." Dad clutched my shoulder. "Eli, promise me." "I promise," I said, feeling something inside me break and strengthen at the same time. Jordan grabbed Dad's bag. Mom unlatched the back window. Clara pulled the curtains tight. And as the door creaked under the force of the men outside, Dad whispered the words that would haunt me forever. "Save our home. Before heaven calls me." Everything after Dad whispered those final words felt unreal, sharp, fast, and terrifying. Mom pushed open the back window as the front door rattled under another blow. Clara helped Dad climb through first, and even though he tried to hide it, every movement hurt him. His breathing was thin, stretched like it barely belonged to him anymore. "Go, go," Mom urged, her voice trembling even though she tried to hold it steady. The night outside was cold, darker than usual, as if the sky itself sensed what was coming for us. We landed behind the house in the narrow space between our backyard fence and the alleyway. Jordan helped Dad stand, but his weight shifted, and he sagged against him with a soft groan. "We need to move," Claire said urgently. "They'll check the back any second." I looked toward the glowing windows of the house, the home we had grown up in, the home Dad had sacrificed everything for. The home now trembling under the fists of men who believed they owned it. Dad's voice was faint. "We just need to reach the car." Mom nodded quickly. "We left it 2 houses down." "Come on." We hurried down the alley, staying close to the shadows. Behind us, the sound of the front door cracking open shot through the air. A man shouted, "They're not here." "Check the back." My heart kicked hard again, dots to my ribs. Mom squeezed my wrist. "Don't look back. Just move." Jordan's jaw tightened as he supported Dad. "We're almost there." He kept whispering like he was trying to convince himself more than Dad. When we reached the car, Mom fumbled for the keys, hands trembling so badly she dropped them. Before anyone could panic, Clara bent down fast and snatched them up. "I've got it," she said. But when she pressed the unlock button, Dad inhaled sharply. "No, wait." We froze, startled. Dad pointed toward the driveway just a few feet away. A dark car sat there, black, sleek, silent. Victor's. Jordan swore under his breath. They blocked us. Mom's shoulders sagged just for a second. Just long enough for fear to crack the brave face she was trying to wear. Clara lowered her voice. "We need another exit. The side street leads to the old churchyard. We can regroup there." Dad nodded weakly. "Church. That's good." Before we could move, a voice from behind the fence made every muscle in my body lock. "Going somewhere?" "Victor." He stepped out from behind the dark corner, a smirk on his face like he'd been waiting for us the whole night. Two of his men moved in behind him. "Ray," Victor said calmly, like this was some friendly reunion. "You're making this harder than it has to be." Jordan stepped in front of Dad instinctively. "Back off." Victor raised an eyebrow, amused. "Bold, misguided, but bold." Mom moved closer to Dad protectively. "Victor, please. He's sick. He needs a hospital. His health is not my concern." Victor replied, shrugging. "He made an agreement. I'm simply here to collect." Dad swallowed, voice strained. "Victor, please." "Not tonight." Victor tilted his head in mock sympathy. "You know, Ray, you always were soft. That's why you lost everything." My fists tightened. He didn't lose everything. We're still here. Victor looked at me, expression intrigued. "Ah, the younger one. You've grown since the last time I saw you." I felt something cold slide down my spine. Jordan's voice hardened. "We're leaving. Right now." Victor smirked. "And where will you go?" "This whole neighborhood knows who owns that house now." He looked at Dad. "You're running out of time." "Old friend." Dad suddenly pushed away from Jordan and staggered forward, leaning heavily on the fence for support. "Victor, listen to me. I know I broke the agreement, but hurting my family won't give you what you want." Victor crossed his arms. "Then what will?" Dad's voice cracked, and I'll never forget how small it sounded. "Let them go. I'll stay. I'll give you whatever time I have left if you leave them alone." Mom gasped. "Reno." "No, absolutely not." Jordan grabbed Dad's arm. "You're not doing this." Victor smiled slow, delighted, monstrous. "Now that is an offer." "No," Mom repeated, tears filling her eyes. "Ray, please." Dad looked at her, and everything inside him softened. "Liana, I won't let them take our children. Not again." My throat felt tight. "Dad." "You don't have to do this." He placed a weak hand on my cheek. "Eli, this is what fathers do." Victor raised a hand, signaling his men. "Bring him." But before they could step closer, a loud horn blared from the street. We all turned. A silver sedan screeched into view, headlights cutting across the alley. The car door opened, and a tall figure stepped out. Clara exhaled sharply. "Oh, thank God." It was Officer Collins' mom's old friend from the community center. He stood in the beam of his headlights, badge glinting, one hand on his holster. "Everyone step away," he commanded. "Now." Victor stiffened, eyes narrowing. "This is private business." "Not anymore," Collins replied. "I've received multiple reports of harassment, break-ins, and threats of violence." Victor's smirk returned, but this time thinner. "You have no proof." Collins's gaze slid to Dad. "I think I do." Dad's legs shook beneath him. His hands trembled. He looked like he could collapse at any moment. Collins stepped closer, voice firm. "Ray, tell me what's going on." Dad swallowed hard, then whispered, "I will. But not here." Victor took a step back, eyes burning with warning. "This isn't over." Collins faced him. "It is for tonight." Victor glared at all of us before signaling his men. They faded into the shadows, but his voice lingered like smoke. "We'll finish this soon." As their footsteps disappeared, Dad collapsed into Jordan's arms. "Dad!" I caught his other side. His breathing was shallow. Too shallow. Mom pressed her forehead to his. Stay with us, Ray, please. Dad opened his eyes just enough to find mine. Eli, remember what I told you. I nodded, voice shaking. The papers. The old house. I'll find them. He gave a weak smile, tired, grateful, full of a love that hurt to look at. Good boy. His eyes fluttered, then closed. Mom screamed his name, and the night swallowed us whole. The sirens carried Dad to the hospital, but the rest of us rode behind in Officer Collins's car, silent and trembling. The city lights blurred through the windows, thin streaks of white and yellow that felt nothing like the world we had known just hours before. Mom kept wringing the sleeve of her sweater, whispering Dad's name under her breath like if she said it enough, he'd stay alive just to answer. Inside the emergency room, the air was sharp, sterile, and cold. Nurses rushed Dad into a room, his body pale as the sheets. We weren't allowed back immediately, so we waited me, Mom, Jordan, and Aunt Clara in a small hallway where every sound echoed. Jordan paced. He gave up his life for us, he muttered. After everything. He still tried to protect us. Mom wiped her face with an exhausted hand. That's who he's always been. We just didn't know the full story. Before any of us could say more, Officer Collins approached. Victor's not far from this, he said quietly. I've already notified a detective team. We're going to look into the threats, the break-ins, everything. But right now, your dad needs you. The door finally opened and a doctor stepped out. The sadness on her face told us everything before she even spoke. He's resting, but you should prepare yourselves. He's not stable. He may not make it through the night. Mom crumbled against Jordan. I swallowed hard, the reality crashing into my chest like a brick. Dad was slipping away. Not because he didn't love us, not because he ran from responsibility, but because life had pushed him into a corner where the only escape was sacrifice. The doctor led us inside. Dad lay still, connected to wires and machines that hummed gently, almost respectfully. His breathing was slow, uneven. But when he heard us enter, his eyes opened just a little. Mom rushed to his side. Ray, we're here. Dad smiled faintly. I knew you would be. Jordan leaned close. Dad, I'm sorry. I should have listened. I should have believed you. Dad shook his head. You were protecting your family. That's what matters. I took his hand. It felt colder than before. Lighter. Fragile. You told me to find the papers, I whispered. And I will. He nodded. They show everything. The debts. The danger. The reason I disappeared? He paused, breath short. I didn't want you growing up in fear. Mom rested her forehead against his. We would have faced it with you. I know, Dad whispered. And that's why I couldn't let it touch you. He closed his eyes for a moment before opening them again, looking at us with a softness that cut deep. You were my home, he said. Even when I wasn't there, you were my home. A long silence followed, filled only by the rhythm of the machines. Then Dad motioned for us to come closer. There's something I need to say. Before I go. Mom shook her head. Don't talk like that, but Dad continued gently. I need you to hear this. All of you. We leaned in. Forgive me. His voice cracked. Forgive me for the years I missed. Forgive me for the nights you cried. Forgive me for not being the man you needed. I loved you. I always did. And I left so you could live. Mom broke into quiet sobs, clutching his hand. Jordan looked away as tears slipped down his face, something I had seen only twice in my life. Aunt Clara pressed a hand to her chest, whispering a prayer under her breath. Dad's breathing became shallower. His eyes drifted between us. Promise me. You'll stay together. Promise me you won't let the past break you. We promise, I said, voice shaking. We do, Jordan added. Mom kissed his forehead. We'll take care of each other. I swear. Dad exhaled slowly, as if relieved. Good. His eyes lingered on Mom one last time. Liana, thank you for being the love of my life. Mom whispered through tears, and you were mine. His chest rose, rose again. Then slowly stopped. A long, haunting beep filled the room. Mom collapsed over him. Jordan sank to the floor. I stood frozen, watching the world tilt and shift without him in it. Dad was gone. Heaven had finally called him home. In the days that followed, Victor was arrested after Collins and the detectives uncovered enough evidence to charge him with fraud, extortion, and endangerment. The papers Dad mentioned were hidden inside a small metal box under the floorboards of our old house, exactly where he said they'd be. They proved everything the community helped us rebuild. The city offered support. And though grief pressed on us like a shadow, we didn't break, because Dad's final request became our anchor. We stayed together. We forgave what needed forgiveness. We healed, slowly but honestly. And every time we passed the old neighborhood, I looked toward the house where it all began, our home before heaven called him. And I whispered, "We're okay, Dad. We're okay now." The weeks after Dad's passing moved like slow waves, quiet, steady, and heavy enough to pull us under if we stood still for too long. Grief is strange that way. It doesn't scream. It doesn't warn you. It just settles into the corners of your life, rearranging everything you thought you understood about love, time, and loss. Our community came together in a way I had never seen before. Neighbors visited with warm bread, rice dishes, and comforting words. Old friends of Dad's appeared with stories we had never heard, stories of how he helped people silently, generously, without ever taking credit. People he had fixed cars for free. People he bought groceries for when they were struggling. People he protected quietly while he kept his own storm hidden. It felt strange. Hearing them talk about a man we were still rediscovering even after he was gone. One evening, about 3 weeks after the funeral, Jordan walked into the living room holding the small metal box. Dad told me about the one we found under the floorboards at the old house. He set it on the coffee table gently, like he was placing Dad's heart right in front of us. "Let's open it," he said. Mom hesitated. "Are you sure?" We looked at the surface documents, but he said there was more. Jordan nodded. "We're ready now." I opened the box, and inside were papers carefully wrapped in an old handkerchief. Beneath them was a small, cracked leather journal. Dad's handwriting covered every page, crooked letters, quick notes, incomplete sentences, thoughts scribbled in the margins. It wasn't neat, but it was honest, raw, human. Mom picked up the journal slowly, touching the cover like it was a fragile piece of him she wasn't ready to lose. As she read silently, tears slipped down her cheeks. "What does it say?" I asked softly. Mom wiped her face. "Everything." She handed it to us. Dad had written the truth of each year he was gone, every threat Victor made, every sacrifice he chose, every plan he attempted to break free. He wrote about us, how much he missed us, how he memorized our birthdays, even when he couldn't call, how he kept pictures of us taped inside the cabinet of the small apartments he lived in. He wrote about Mom, pages and pages of how he loved her, how leaving her broke something inside him that never healed. There were moments where the ink blurred water stains or tears, I couldn't tell. By the last entry, Jordan couldn't read anymore. He handed it to me, voice strained. "You finish it." The final page was written just weeks before he found Aunt Clara. Dad's writing shook across the lines. "If I don't make it back home before heaven calls me, at least let them know this. Everything I did was for them. Every wrong path I took was me trying to protect them. If I can't return, let them know they were never abandoned. They were my light in the darkest years of my life." I closed the journal, pressing it to my chest. Mom whispered, "He came back. He kept his promise, even if it cost him everything." Months passed. We moved forward slowly, carefully. Officer Collins kept us updated on Victor's case. With Dad's journal, the documents, and witness statements, Victor's charges grew heavier. He eventually received a long sentence, and for the first time since Dad disappeared years ago, the shadow over our family finally lifted. One afternoon, as the year neared its end, Mom called us into the living room. "I want to talk about the house," she said. Jordan frowned. "Which one? The new place?" She shook her head. "No, the old one. Our first home." A quiet understanding passed between us. That home wasn't just a building. It was a memory. A wound. A beginning and an ending. "We should fix it," Mom said. "Restore it. Not to live in, but for him, for what he wanted. A place given back to the community. Jordan crossed his arms thoughtfully. Like a shelter? Like a place of hope, Mom answered. A place people can go when life turns dark. Dad ran because he had nowhere safe to go. Maybe we can build the thing he never had. I felt a warmth spread in my chest. Let's do it. So we did. It took months of repairs, painting walls, replacing floors, fixing a roof that looked tired from too many seasons. Volunteers from our neighborhood helped. Colin stopped by with supplies. Kids who remembered Dad helping their parents brought tools. We named it Raymond House. And on the day, we opened it. People filled the yard, families, elders, young people searching for direction. Neighbors who wanted to support others the way Dad once did. Mom stood at the front with Jordan and me. She wore a soft smile, calm and strong. Ray wanted to protect this community, she said to everyone. He didn't leave because he stopped loving us. He left because he believed our safety mattered more than his life. Today, this house stands for everything he fought for: sacrifice, protection, hope, and a better path forward. The crowd clapped gently, respectfully. The sun dipped behind the houses, casting a warm glow across the street. And in that moment, I swear I felt Dad's presence, not as pain this time, but as peace. As if he was finally home in the way he always wanted to be. Later that evening, as we closed the doors for the night, Jordan looked at me. Do you think he sees this? I nodded without hesitation. He sees everything we became. Mom stood beside us, her voice soft but sure. He didn't get to stay long, but he brought us back together. He gave us the truth. He gave us a second chance. We locked the doors of Raymond House, and as we walked away, the streetlights flickered on one by one, guiding us forward, lighting our way like gentle reminders of the man who spent his last breath making sure we were safe. And even though he was gone, home no longer felt empty, because home wasn't the house, wasn't the street, wasn't the name. Home was the love he left behind. Years later, the world around us changed, but Raymond House remained a quiet symbol of healing in the heart of our community. The building was never fancy, never perfect, but it didn't need to be. People stepped inside with broken spirits and walked out with a little more strength than they came with. That was enough. One quiet evening, I returned alone. The sky was painted with soft orange light. The same shade I remembered on the night we lost Dad. I stood by the doorway, listening to the faint hum of voices inside, families talking, laughter echoing through the hall. Footsteps of people who finally felt safe. I looked up at the sign above the door, Raymond House, a place to begin again. For a moment, I closed my eyes and allowed the past to settle gently around me. The chaos, the fear, the loss, the truth we uncovered, it all shaped us, but it no longer defined us. Dad's story didn't end in fear or running. It ended in purpose, in legacy, in a home rebuilt, not from bricks, but from forgiveness. Jordan walked up behind me, hands in his pockets. Mom's already inside, he said. She's helping a young man who just lost his father. I smiled. She's good at that. She learned from the best, he replied softly. We stepped inside together, the warm air wrapping around us like familiar arms. And for the first time in a long time, I felt peace. Real peace. The kind that doesn't erase the past but accepts it, softens it, turns it into something brighter. Dad didn't get the chance to watch us grow into the people we became. But in every life changed within those walls, he lived on. And as I closed the door behind us, I whispered the final truth I had finally learned. This will always be our home before heaven called him, after he left us, and for every life his story will touch.